sun and the bright hair, you guys are actually doing. Theoretically, bird watchers are at the intersection of photographers, naturalists, environmentalists,
very brave
anti-voyeurs, and
so it was difficult
seeing
to
as
contact
telephoto lenses on roadside
Some of them have been
seeing as telephoto lenses on
Chinese
roadside
and
slopes,
called
middle-aged
mature
men, women,
but
standing
many of
next
them
to
are still
the
called
living
living
right to
round.
see.
Although
Their
they
shots
are
of
an
kinds of
ethnic
birds,
minority,
a
their
moral
cultural
so much
influence
so,
is
they
also
repeatedly
pretty
visit
strong.
and
That's right. They're
As
not
others
every
said,
region
humans will
and
not
with that,
explain
it's that the
anything
author, he actually has some explanation at the beginning of the book, but not in the form of monologue, not a very straightforward creative statement about that I thought it was a form or whatever, but wrapped up in a book are these little words, just like the psychology of travel that I heard from the in the simplified Chinese edition I have. There is an article written by the author on the 15th anniversary of the publication. So the migration started in the 1970s. It took a generation, right? The Mayo people are the only ones who have ever lived in the world.
It will change over, that's, it will no longer be called Mayo, but it could be.
History of the domestication of chicken is about 8,000 years old, and the earliest Chinese oracle owns inscriptions in the day on chicken culture. The earliest Chinese oracles inscriptions, and they were talking chicken to the Scottish, and then they had this process to pottery chickens. They had a lot of artifacts about 4,000 years of meaning, and later on there started to be more and more Nigerian. Just this is gradually
This view itself we won't discuss for a moment. In fact, this view is actually not really new or old anymore. It has been around for a long time, right? If we look at the author's approach to this part of the book, we will see that his writing style
Author had
the
a
ideas
told a story about how one day he was tired of walking the mountains. He was resting on top of the mountain, and suddenly he heard the rumbling sound of falling rocks coming from the far side of the mountain. So he looked over to the place of the collapse.
There is a similar situation with the Japanese word for gogo, which is also written with this Chinese character for gogo, ho.
And he planted a lot of herbs in the car park and took them to make soup and water for Leah to drink. And
This is a bird
finally, he tried a trick
a
which was to
national level
change his
protected
name.
animal, a
They
world
believed that
nature
once the name was
conservation
changed,
effort.
the evil spirits would not recognize him, and they would be able to fool him.
It is the male bird of the family Chiropterae. They look very, very beautiful. That the so-called this rainbow pheasant is not a red pheasant.
Yes,
It's a
it's
rainbow
that
rainbow.
shift in his narrative perspective. And it's this shift in point of view.
which is
The
found
title
in
of the book
Southeast
is
Asia
Travel
and the
Stories,
Southeastern
but it's not a
Peninsula.
travel
It's
story.
actually quite
Just as Bill's
widespread
amputation
in Asia,
story,
except
it's a
in the
planet in a
Northwest.
new group.
But
In
because
this
it is
one, I
well
think
hidden, it
you
may
can
be
understand
unfamiliar
it
to
as a satellite
Well,
in
then, though,
orbit
it may
around
be a
it.
bit far away from our lives now, but it is still embedded in the culture of East Asia.
He has published numerous scientific papers, written 17 books, and made
Though it is also a community that faces no fertility. What about the red pheasant? Well, the Red Plains chicken lays a little bit more, but a clutch of 7 or 8 eggs at the most. Do you know how many eggs are laid by the kind of hens that specialize in laying eggs on farms nowadays? They can lay 200 to 300 eggs a year. Basically one a day.
There's a lot of commotion.
And this is the result of
There are also
continuous
people dressed very
artificial
strangely.
This
It says that when doctors do medical examinations, they always find that the Hmong adults are always wearing children's clothes. I guess it's because they're probably going somewhere to buy those extra cheap buckets, and then because the Hmong are smaller in stature for Americans.
We found that there were no records of Indian or Chinese chickens.
For example, in the Tokyo Olympics in 2021, there was a gymnastics champion from the United States, a young Hmong girl. Then there was another Hmong who was a state legislator in Minnesota for 2
Watching the
terms,
sunrise
also.
little by little,
This book
snow-capped
The
mountains
sound of the
lit up in the night
the
sky,
mountain heard the
waiting for
barking,
another
and
creature
it spread out like a
When it was still
as if
running
the
from
animals
very
were warning each other that a
myself
collapse
from
had
especially
occurred,
the first
and
so quite
They that the people in the mountains used to live day after day as a natural way of living, and they would have observed that the animals and sun melted flies.
There are vegetative people who are care. Maybe this one looks dyspraxic, right, with an unusually large head, a small body, or very pale complexion, or a foul smell on it. He said no, they looked healthy, a medical miracle with shiny hair, and then this one smelled good too, and they refused to talk to him.
It's actually the same suspension of disbelief world. It's not just animals that are driven by desires, judgments, and
report about the psychology of travel that he has heard are incomplete and highly fragmented. Even he had the stuff their enemies elected to they should break the race people out of the long hardly convince the Han of the superiority of their own customs over the Han.
Then he says that in November one morning in a rainstorm, he was pulled out and just exchanged to hide in a raccoon hut to cut his fur. On hand was only one reference book the author could think of, Joy of Cooking.
This is also the original English title of the book. It means that the evil spirits grab you and you fall down. But from the perspective of modern medicine, this phenomenon is called neonatal epilepsy. This brings us to the topic of why people get sick. What the whole individual is obviously very different from what the white American doctors and central
In the context of the war at that time, Vietnam was directed to the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and South Vietnam was directed to the capitalist camp of the United States. They agreed that we would have an electoral merger. But now that they were divided into camps, it was obvious that they could not talk to each other properly, and the Vietnam War broke out.
Well, I don't think so, because when I was reading it,
The reason is that other anthropologists will always write about the culture of an ethnic group,
very empathetic.
what they look like, what they say, what physical characteristics they have, and so on. But when Nikki wrote this, or he did not only write this, he certainly wrote what kind of look, language, physical characteristics, etc. And he just mentioned,
quote, it's a good foot, there's a hole, like the top.
And then how did this view really work?
The arms.
The first 13 children were born.
The arms of
It was done on its own. It didn't need to live. It didn't cry or midwife. It just reached between its legs where it had to stretch and pull the baby's head out by itself. It was unimaginable for us nowadays. The most he could do was get thirsty and ask her husband, nudge her, to pour her a glass of water because it was forbidden to see her body during the birth. So the doctors finally couldn't take it anymore, and they tried all sorts of communication methods that didn't work. The doctors petitioned the US Department of Health and Child Protective Services, and the California Superior Court immediately enforced their petition, declaring Leah to be in the custody of the juvenile court and removing him from parental custody.
It all seems to have a sense of hypocrisy in terms of the fact that, after all, the song was created with the intention of teaching Taiwanese children to speak Japanese. If we look back on this history now, it's really quite poignant. You can see that this little bird, this white helmet, this little bird's body actually bears a lot of things. And I think this
Tom believes that many things can cause illness, such as eating the wrong things, drinking unclean water, being affected by climate change, incomplete ejaculation during sexual intercourse, neglecting to make offerings to their ancestors instead of their ancestors, and being cursed to be blown by storms. Some people use ancient trees to put stones in their bodies, and evil spirits who have been sucked by evil spirits and bumped into trees or leaves become extinct in the land of evil spirits. Bumping into gnomes, evil spirits eating earth.
that's what the author observed.
Crushed in the
Birds warn
chest
each
by
other.
evil
A
spirits.
flock of a bird hears a threat.
Washing
I
clothes
answered,
by dragging
chirp
them
loudly
back.
so that another flock of bee birds a long way away. It will also hear this and chirp loudly, and then it starts to spread. Even say that might be the same species, it could be another species of bird that also notices and chirps as
It's
well.
just the media, isn't it? It's
The most
all
common
bullshit.
cause of the disease, however,
And you pick up what you want to pick up out of whatever it is that's
are
in
divided
your
on how many souls a
world.
person has.
But the subject he chose was about bird like it now. Where it's 20 to 30 degrees at night, and it's particularly cold, and then one weighs 5 grams. How does such a small creature spend the night in the open air without freezing to death?
Is there a more
And the
interesting
layers of
man?
feathers on
He's
the
looking for
golden
this and
colours
considering
and
this.
animals.
While a
So
Han
this
Chinese
time
in
is
the upstream
he's saying
but
there is
aware
no
in the
form.
eyes of the downstream.
Just
So in the
like
whole
you can see
region,
what
all
is
we
a
see is this
rock.
ethnic structure of one section and one section. It sounds a bit like the chain of contempt we are talking about.
And to be honest, I'm not
Now then, Miss
12.
Anne, I just said, do I understand?
Are the Bukir one of them? Yes, Bukir was a member of the Alpine tribe, and according to the way we divide them, they are called Bun. Not Bun and Bun. These people are made. They live in the high mountain areas, which are over 1,500 degrees Celsius. But Bun believe in ant worship, which means that they believe in the high spirits of all things. A bit like the Japanese into religion receives
These chickens are the original chickens. The original chicken is a genus. So which species of chicken was domesticated in this genus? That's a good question, you know. Darwin studied this. The origin of the domestic fowl was thought to have come from India, just like the tank cells. What can we do if there is a problem? There is a way to hire a male and female fish. So this is what it says in this book. Tuan Gong, so let me read it. Well, the powerful Tuan Gong can bring his son out of his body and summon a group of powerful brothers to ride on flying horses across the 12 mountains of heaven and earth, across the sea where dragons live, to a realm invisible to the naked eye, to negotiate with the local spirits. Such is how sound comes to come from me. What is a hen? It's a woman called a chick. A chick is a cow that looks a bit like a deer, a beast, and it barks like a puppy, buzzing, kind of cute. So after this little mountain goat called, another one called, and then it seemed to be called.
Anyway, once you put it in, just whatever you want. You show it. So a lot of Hmong people in the past, he was already a relatively middle-aged person, and then, well, they just said he was all small, he was insisted. So after a decade or two, in the United States, the couple that our author describes, Yale and you, after they had lost 20 years, they were able to use appliances very skillfully. They didn't squat on the toilet anymore. They didn't do the strange things that people seem to do. But they still only spoke Hmong. They only celebrated Hmong festivals. They only practiced Hmong religion. They only cooked Hmong food. They only sang Hmong songs, and they only spoke Hmong. They only sing Hmong songs, only play Hmong instruments, and only tell Hmong stories. You're right. If the first ones don't affect too much and they can be implemented, by the time of this article in 2012, over 101 had received this training. So you can see that on the one hand, the hospital is accepting the beliefs of the Hmong people. On the other hand, the Hmong are slowly accepting the hospital's practices and claims and no longer think that the doctors are just messing around. And then what I just said about the Hmong, you either had his own or second generation to start up, right? He also had this has also become a power because he had a lot of people. I remember is that the Morstadt town up there seems to be a quarter or a third of them were Hmong people all gathered together like that. And the hospital arranged a training program called Healing Partners to Train Who?
It's not just
This birth year of the child is also not exact. They have no concept of time, no clear concept of time.
For example,
Exactly. And then because the US requires you to fill out an ID card, right? So it's just that there's a lot of one person who says he's had 15 children per year, and then on average, each one was born on the 15th of July.
He still had to write poems to express the kind of resentment that he couldn't say straight, and that kind of sadness.
It changed according to the developed watch side. She saw herself reflected in all of the parents.
Animals are still not allowed to be slaughtered in the hospital. Are they allowed to be gone for drugs? They are still banned from burning incense and paper punches. But it's impossible to let them do it in a room without smoke alarms because these rituals still affect other people too much after all.
Is to get a good idea of what you're getting into and then to release breathes the wind and evil
Yeah,
in his body.
it's not a great colour scheme. The bird
The
has a
idea
rainbow
is
colour
that there is
scheme.
only one
Yes,
soul.
its
手进去
feathers
看啊。
are
那是投影仪吗？
yellow
是投影在那个窗帘上。
because it's structurally coloured. The colours change.
这下面投影仪是你装的吗？
Because they're so far away and don't move out.
你从哪里做设备？
This is the
不
lack
要
of
说设备，
resources.
墙也是我放的，窗帘也是我装的。
那是你装的窗帘，上的墙，设备是你装上来的。
Because there aren't enough concentrated resources.
不好的艺术家需要会做木工。
我就说昨天你跟他说我家里的木工怎么弄，我就还挺那个啥的。
因为墙是我去年作品要用的墙，所以也是我去年装的建的墙。
Western thing, the big name shed.
他昨天也说嘛，弄木工卖材料啥的，别都知道。我当时就
West is not what
然后后面这些贴纸自己弄好，然后这样，
Western
然后外面那个遮阳板是。
哦，那个啥，窗户上也是贴的东西。
对啊，然后那外面还有遮阳帘也是自己弄的。
啊。
Yeah, it's working.
In this area. And based on his observations, that in areas where resources are scarce, for example,
上面这是什么东西？
scarce
这是什么设备？
beyond
这是
villages
飞车。
or locations situated on top of very high mountains, and you have to walk for 2 or 4 hours to get there.
所以现在什么在播
就这个几层不同的消息，一层是最原始消息，语音就现在2分钟的语音和文字对，就是同时出现了一个就混合式的信息流，然后它们被整合成一个 wave 信息流的 wave，然后 pass through the truth that 那个去看到这个是 BBC 创始人 BBC 开台的时候放说的对话谈的是人们对于那个 media 媒介和公共之间的关系，然后你要透过不同的成像，然后用神灵对看到外面，但是外面也是被filter 过滤镜过，然后而且你需要不断的变动你的位置，但是即使这样，你的视角是被整个这个 space 所限制住的，你需要穿过那道白色的墙才能看到外面。
哪个白色？这个，我们还能过去。
啊，不能过去，但是是这个隐喻。
就是它这表现，就是说它的这个信息是通过各种的媒体。
不，媒体的信息是一个新的渠道，然后传统的文件和
要看到真相。
技术方式，对，也不光是这样的，传统文件技术方式，书本和线性已经无法满足今天的文件和信息流传播的渠道。然后，但是即使他们正在他们在网上或者说他们总会在某一个时间点中以随机的方式进行刻意有意的信息，但实际上意义都是他们的本质是不需要被阅读的，他们只是潮流。你要穿过这些信息的缝隙，才能看到背后人们的思考。
is another 20 that if you still have this in that year, then you're going to make him
Then you're going to send electrical signals to confusion. This is you don't have to think about your emotions. Is that you don't have to
然后这边你要不断的改变你的位置，才能听到别人在说什么，或者当两个音响同样离距离近的时候，对，
是你跟我在说，你在跟我说的时候，
对，
我是
你要离他很近才能知道，
我是听不懂你说的话是什么。他有这种声音的。
专心的听一个，
对，然后你站在这里的时候，你其实是会感到你的文字的，你的观察行为会影响你所观察的对象，使得你永远无法观察一个真实的课题。
你这是艺术，
艺术，
啊，不是艺术学院吗？这是你的毕业设计，啊。
So the creatures of the ancient song were the same as the ones we see.
哇，这个窗帘，那是你当时是怎么样的一种创意？
我有一个非常大的一个毛线毯，然后把它拆开，然后后面印东西，剥开毛线毯的，然后不够大，1米2乘1米2，然后又搞更大更大。
And then start to get shown on this dynamic.
He took off all the tissues from the leg and put it
而且它是一个可以打开窗帘去看东西，是一个经典的一个方式，经典的女性的东西，是内建在就是文化开放里面。
Darwin says that the Indian chicken dates from about 1200 BC, but some people think it only dates from 800 BC. Then in this book, Darwin also says that according to a Chinese encyclopedia, the chicken was a Western animal that was introduced to the East, a dynasty in the 1400s BC. What do you mean by Chinese encyclopedia? It sounds like such a vague reference, and it is a good question as to which book it is.
Now I know. What is the use of notes?
Because I'm very curious about the
那你这个你这么这个 A
，it is field of expertise. Science discovered deep for example, I later published a book on anatomy of
Prince Maito, like his father, was a biologist and worked with several other scientists to discover that all domestic chickens are monobacterial. That is, all domestic chickens have only one common ancestor, and domestic chickens are all the descendants of this ancestor.
I tried to bear who's listening to culture. I slowly sent it on the scenes. They were talking about being able to enjoy At first, that's a rock. Becoming a archaeologist is not really chosen, but a destiny. Because of the high status of the London profession among the clan, the Q and Gong is also a research person's band. After all, it's not seek out mediocre people to possess epilepsy, even if the patient is not chosen as a Q and Gong. It is a disease that is beyond the carries with it inside of the patient and doing it by yourself.
人口大屠杀的东西和手机北京政治宣传对于人的影响，这个作品，今年有关于政治作品很多。
我看让他有一个人所有的
The first whole genome sequence of the red pheasant, which took more than 50 institutions worldwide 5 years to complete. Then in 2008, Swedish scientist called Leif Anderson said that the modern chicken had the genome of the chicken.
that humans were originally like animals, covered in hair, indistinguishable from them, and got along well. But the human was always a bit weird.
Yes, it's that shift in his narrative perspective.
To lie down, but a lot of things are still going on. The community hospital where she went for treatment is now called Mercy Medical Center in the North Side.
They were found, and the humans were even weirder when they died.
You can understand
He spent the whole day by this work fountain sharpening things with a knife, and the animals were wondering what the humans would do. And the raven said, I'll go and sell.
The herd variety of people produced to where the herd feet are going. I understand very well that our mission is to moisten the dust to explore a sense of mystery that purifies away seriousness. There's a sense of hitting a nerve like that. Yes, that's what his writing style is.
Because the whole thing is, why they're complicated, but then, again, if you start thousands of years ago, you don't really have to go into a lot of detail. So maybe we can start with the origins of the Hmong people instead. Yes, there are many different versions of its origins. Some say Western Siberia, some say it's European blood, so they look whiter. The reason why the green-tailed pheasant is only vulnerable is not that one of the main reasons is that they have a very low breeding rate. In the 1980s, I read a paper the other day. A survey record, he said that only 30 of the green-tailed red pheasant individuals participated in breeding in 2 years. And even if they did breed, they would only lay 1 clutch of eggs a year with only 3 or 5 eggs per clutch. Even Medical Center has also designated 9 kinds of rituals that can be performed by the Tuan Kung at the bedside, such as the recitation of the word and the sacrifice to the gods, which are on hand. The represent blessings, where there are 2 kinds of rituals. One is for the soul of the patient, and the other is for the soul of the deceased. And what's more, more you have to do with twilight culture. Anything is not willing to let them go. Think that say you were just harming people. Then show these medical technologies to the office, let him try it himself. Then after the end of the day, you will get a badge, and with this badge, you will be able to go in and out of the ward as freely as the other clergy, priests, and so on. This type of narrative, it meets a certain need of the time. For example, the first introduction of cheese and warming in Karakinsburg, or Luo Xing's new book last year, The Long Remains of the Day and the Preference of Roxiki. Then generally speaking, in microhistory, it will face a difficult problem. That is how you have to deal with the individual and the group, or the local and the overall, this so-called dichotomy of this kind of problem, the installation of message problem. Just he said this about him. He doesn't want to trade his health for epilepsy, he just wants to feel good about having it. So, the Hmong actually consider epilepsy to be a glorious disease, and the Hmong who have epilepsy often become Tuanggong shamans. So we often see this image of these Tuanggong shamans, and one of the things that they do is roll their eyes. In other words, it is the western part of China, and the Daming Shenandoah is the Daming period, but here the Daming is not the Daming under the microscope. It was during the time of Emperor Wu of the northern and southern dynasties, that is between 420 and 479 AD. Then, after that time, it was introduced to the east of China, so this east refers to the east of China.
This thinking, in which worship and arrogance go hand in hand, borders on ancient intuition. Inward self-knowledge is the same as knowing yourself in front of the temple court of Apollo in Delphi, and outwardly it is the feeling that knowledge of the natural world has its own benefits, which is how the self-knowledge records the penmanship of the poetic scriptures, which are mostly known by the names of birds, animals, and grasses. The opening of the ancient psalms follows these two.
Why would you do something like that? In his later years, a lot of people just thought he was crazy, at least in the novels. I'm not sure if this letter exists or not. It's hard to tell from the fiction what is historical fact and what is the author's imagination. The only thing that's certain is that I think it's all know that the various organs that they see in animals are actually similar to the organs in humans. They know there's a heart because you can feel it being outside the body, right? But other than that, you can't even explain the lungs to them, can you? If you haven't seen a lung, how can you seconds later he had to hammer something fell simultaneously from a height side by side, and they both plummeted straight down to the ground, as if pulled by invisible ropes, landing at exactly the same moment in the grave. You can also validate preconceptions about what I want to make clear. The experiment just to show the sheet on his website to finally back to the real sorting out their I can dictate my own text and honestly pay for it by the word count. I am playing the role of midwife, trying to be subtitle only contributed by a Hmong child, so Chinese people might think it's a Chinese child, a child from Yunnan or Guangxi, but he's not. This child is actually from Laos. So what's going on? Because they don't send him to follow-up appointments on time. And they don't give him this medicine that the doctors have prescribed, not to mention what scraping and cupping and